Hi, I'm Walt Forsey. Polly and I were at McDonald's where we ran into Bernie Tusenart. And Bernie said, "You know, Immaculate Heart of Mary Parish is so young, there are people going to church there today who actually got the parish started." He said that would be a good story to tell, and I agree. For people of a certain age, the 1950s were great years. In the 50s, Riverview was nothing like the bustling place it is today. In fact, there was no Riverview. This side of the river consisted of Bridgedale, Gunningsville, and Riverview Heights. But it was in the 50s that the population started to grow.
A man was determined to move to the country, and so he brought me out to look at this place. It was just newly built. And he brought me out here about 5 times before I conceded that, yeah, I'll try it out. Maureen was just 3 years old at that time, so I had lots of babysitters in the community, and so it worked out well.
I said when I move, I'll move someplace where the children can walk to school, and it was a brand new school, a new area, and it kind of fitted in with our plan.
Well, we were living in Sunnybray at the time, and we had to move. We were just renting, and people wanted the house, so we decided we would come across the river, and we found a lot here, and it was near the school, as Joe said, and we've been here ever since.
We were looking for a house with a bit more space, because my mother-in-law was living with us at the time, and we had a girl and a boy, so we needed a little more space in the little wartime houses, but that's where we were living, in the wartime housing there. Bridgedale itself was a sort of a community village. Everybody knew everybody else, and it was really a friendly atmosphere. It was a great place for the kids to grow.
We were married in 1948, and we rented a place in Sunnybray at that time. Got a job teaching here rather than in Sunnybray. We moved then in September.
At first, people over here went to Moncton for church. Then they started having Mass on this side of the river.
They used to have church services at the naval base, in the gym. That's where we first, what I first remember. But I guess they did have Mass in the library at the high school at first too.
We first had Mass for a year, maybe yes, a full year, was in the balcony of the school. The reason we had it in the balcony, we had a handmade altar that there was a committee who would always go ahead and have that set up for the priest that was going to say Mass. They came from St. Bernard's at that time. And so anyway, we had the handmade altar, and the reason we had it up there, up in the balcony, it would accommodate maybe 20 families. So we didn't have a big job of cleaning up the gym and things like that afterwards. So that was the start. We had that there for, I would say, what, Marion? A couple of years, year and a half.
I think so, yeah.
So then when that got too small for us, Father Hines and the committee, he was appointed the priest for over here, like a committee that was on the finance, they approached the Archbishop for a grant or enough money to get started on to build a new parish. So that was the beginning of our parish here.
A committee was established at that time, of which Bob Murphy was the president, elected president. Charlie Morris was the next president, and Romeo Bohan and was a third president, and I was the last of the four that were appointed to, I guess, to get things rolling.
Bob Murphy was a very, very good entertainer, and he used to get us singing different songs with actions and things like this that made the evening enjoyable.
The group met monthly at different homes, and our first priority was to help out with the catechism program. Father Butler, pastor at St. Bernard's, had conducted it for a little while there. Then we made arrangements for the sisters to come from Mary's home in Mountain Road to come every Sunday. There was a committee of the men formed to pick them up and take them back, and if that was Lloyd Horton and Mrs. Murphy and Mrs. George Fowler was the committee.
It was always on Sunday afternoon, and the kids used to look forward. Someone would go over with their mom or dad or whatever and bring the sisters back to the church. And they were lovely sisters. The kids just loved them, and it was a great thrill to have the car ride back and forth.
They had bought a piece of land on the Pine Glen Road for the church. So anyway, that wasn't very suitable to Father Hines, which was a very fine guy to work with and get along with. So anyway, Father Hines decided that he looked for something different. And he went to college with one of the real estate guys that was in with Dobson. So this property that the original church is on now was up for sale. So this is how we got the property, through a friend of his at Dobson's.
Parishioners were very generous. The offerings used to be, very substantial for the size of the parish and the amount of people in it.
Now, one annual event was the ham and scallop suppers at St. Bernard's Hall. That was a big effort because we had to go there and wash all those dishes. They weren't used too often then. Get all the food over there and so on. Now, the first event, we had 325 people, and Bannon Ahern was the convener along with Charles. They co-convened it. Then I have a little picture there that Bob had put out in the paper, and of just how successful the dinners were. Then, of course, we had to warn them not to bring the food back, because that didn't please people. If you brought back their roaster half full or all full, which happened the first year, we had a few too many ordered. So we told Charles and Lloyd not to bring any of the scallops back. What did they do? Came along the river, and of course at that time you could throw overboard anything you didn't want. Away went the scallop dishes along with the scallops. Now we weren't too popular there. We had to replace naturally.
We worked very, very hard to establish that little church, because we had to have many, many bake sales, suppers, you name it. But we had a very willing group, and of course we were all much younger then and willing. And
at first you paid for your seat when you went in, so if you had 5 kids, you had to pay for 5, and the parents, that would be 7, but the man and his wife, they only had to pay for 2.
So you had to pay for your seat in the church?
That's right.
Really?
Yeah.
You rented your seat. And that was done in St. Augustine's as well when we lived, because we lived in that parish in the first place. Nobody dared get in that seat, except the family.
By 1961, we had 118 families. When they went by streets, so that we appointed one or two per street to welcome any new family that came, and if they went to our church, to invited to our societies that were then formed.
I have to be thankful for Father Leo Hines' foresight in getting that property and getting sufficient property to enable us to build the new church on it, as it probably is prime property in Riverview and would have cost us a lot more money if we had not had that already. He saw that Riverview was a growing community, and so he purchased a very big, piece of property.
Late April or the 1st of May in 1959, the excavation for the Immaculate Heart of Mary Church was started. There was no public ceremony over that. The bishop decided he would bless the church when it was finished. So the church was located, of course, on a hill, and we were very fortunate to have that. And it was a plot of land about 500 by 250, I guess. The hill overlooked the Pettigodiac, emptying twice a day, which was a unique marvel. Then going up the hill was thought of as going up to Jerusalem or up on the mountain of Sinai and so on.
All the area beyond the church there, that was just berry fields. People used to go there to pick blueberries. And there was the housing was just beginning to develop.
Construction of the rectory was the next project, and it took place in 1965, and we held our meetings there until the cigarette smoke coming upstairs and entering and bothering Father's living quarters, so we had to cancel our meetings there. It was the reason it was built as big as it was to provide space for the catechism classes too.
Behind me is the original church, although at the time it was only half that size. There was a big expansion that was done in the mid-1970s. Now that expansion was a big deal for the parishioners at that time, but it was nothing, it was peanuts compared to building the new church down there.
When I came from Rexton to Immaculate Heart, I had heard that the parish had been talking about the possibility of a new church, and when I arrived, if I remember correctly, we had 4 masses on a weekend, 1 on Saturday and 3 on Sunday morning, and the churches, each of the masses was quite full, and some of them were very full, and the children's room, which was quite large in the old church building, it was seated about 100 or 150 people, was always full. So it was evident that the church building had not kept up to the growth of the parish for its being able to accommodate the parish. The parish was growing, it was active, and obviously overflowing its space. So I felt that it was time to look at the possibility of expanding or doing something to better accommodate the people who came. So that began the study. I began to discuss it with the pastoral council, the parish council, and the finance committee, and with people in the parish, and there seemed to be an interest there, and if I remember, we got together a building committee to begin the study, and it was quite a process. It was important to know if the people in the parish wanted to enter into this venture, because to expand or to build a new church would be quite an undertaking for a parish, a large undertaking, and it would have required a large commitment. So that's where we begin to sound out the parish and to see what the people who were involved in parish life thought about our needs. I knew that to build a church, a new church, that it would have to be different from the traditional churches in the area because the liturgy of the church had changed dramatically since the Second Vatican Council. The need for participation of the community, the sense of closeness to the altar, all of those things would determine how the church would be shaped and what form it would take.
Was there any opposition to building a new church?
There was some. People weren't sure of the need of it. They knew it would be a big expense. But I think the majority of people were behind it. I think we did surveys. We sounded out opinion. Of course, the biggest indication of commitment was going to be if people would give the money for it. So we did. Part of that process was evaluating pledges, commitments, and things like that. And
the parish met with 5 or 6 architects to get their input. They wanted one that had experience building churches, and they settled on Jerry McNeil from Nova Scotia. He had recently built several churches in that province.
We pretty well had to give the architect free rein in his imagination, and he came up with the design that we have. It gave us a large foyer, which is we wanted because it gives people a chance to come together as a community before they actually enter the main part of the church. The baptismal font was important because we wanted a baptismal font that would allow us to baptize by immersion and not just pour in water, because the revised understanding of baptism in the church called for immersion as the first way it suggested of doing the baptism, as the one that gave the fullest symbolism. So we needed a big baptismal font, and again, to have the altar in close to people and people close to the altar was important. So the architect gave us a very imaginative design. It used very natural elements. It was a building that reflected, it was welcoming, a lot of wood in it. His use of those 4 large trees to be its main physical support were very interesting and attractive to many people. It gave the church a unique atmosphere to it, a unique element to it. And it was very challenging. It was very time consuming. It took hours and hours of every week of my time. But also, on the other hand, it was very exciting to see the building come together and to begin to rise up on that part of the hill on Buckingham. And nothing happens completely according to plan, and there were challenges and things that didn't happen that were supposed to happen, or they didn't happen on time. And but anyway, those are the normal processes of going through anything, I guess. So
everything in that church has a meaning. Every cross beam and those big pillars, that's the 4 apostles, and everything has meaning. The 7 sacraments are pictured there, and the 12 evangelists. Everything has meaning.
Marion's family is mine. Marion's family is right down in the Midwest in the United States, you know, like as far as California. And my family's right from Vancouver, right to the American border. So, you know, they think the new structure is really something very, very clever.
Yeah.
You know, they liked it. It was different.
Yeah.
And one fellow from Montreal, he was you know, they had a lot of nice churches in Montreal, which we know that, and he thought it was out of this world when he first saw it, you know.
I believe the architect won a design award for the altar, yes. It was it was very different, and I'm sure it took a while for people to get used to it, but it's a very strong focal point in the church. The altar is very massive, and obviously something that is important and central to the church building and to the life of the church community as a result of that.
Now the old church is the parish hall, the
Yes.
Dan Bohan Family Center with the big sign on the
Yes,
outside.
yes. Well, that was very kind of Father Doucette and the community to do that. You know, it's usually they wait till people die before they name buildings after them. So I was surprised when he did it, and I thought it was a very, very nice gesture, and I was very you know, it made me feel very pleased and thankful.
Here's a little trivia about the wrought iron sculpture on the outside of the Dan Bohan Center.
Apparently it was built by 2 Polish boys that were working at that time at the Moncton Foundry. And other than that,
Well, Father Hines wanted something like the Immaculate Heart of Mary in design. So these 2 boys were working at the foundry. Probably they were immigrants from Poland right after, you know, Poland fell back to the people. And so these Polish guys, I suppose they must have been maybe engineers, I don't know. They designed it and built it at the foundry. But they've never been able to locate these 2 fellows. Our Catholic parish in Riverview, there's a lot of other denominations as well. We're certainly looked up to in a good standard, which means a lot to the community. You know, in the fall of the year of the veterans, when the Armistice Day, they used the church for that, and if it's too small for something else, the priests are always willing to help them out, whatever they can do, which is great.
A lot of hard work went into fundraising, a lot of hard work went into the planning, and there were marvelous people in the parish that worked very hard for it, and they certainly can look at that church as their building, you know, as their community's building. And, just a wonderful commitment of time and effort and energy and devotion that brought that building together.